I don't want to forget that. So thank you everybody for joining us tonight. If this is the first time we've met, I see some new names. So welcome and thanks for joining us. My name's Kelly Ryder and I'm the founder of English Learner Portal. And we try to have as many informational sessions as possible, at least once or twice a month throughout the school year. And so I am happy tonight to introduce you to a colleague who we've worked with for, I don't even know when we started. It was pre-COVID when we started working together as Off to Class was developing their resources, doing some consulting, doing some webinar sharing like this. But it's been a little while, so it's nice to get back together. And I want to introduce you to Chris Rush from Off to Class, and I'll let him give his official introduction and then introduce you to Off to Class.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for having me, Kelly. It's great to be here. And I see the people in the chat. I'm in Florida. I'm in the panhandle of Florida. I see a lot of Maryland people here too. So I've spent some time on the Eastern Shore, which is like the least populated part of Maryland. So it's great to see everybody. And just as we get started, you can see there's a QR code on the first slide. And I'll go ahead and I'll put an actual link in the chat, or Christine will. And that's to get a free premium Off to Class account that you can use for the next 120 days for up to 50 students. Yeah, I think I can get a little louder. Do I need to increase my volume here? Yeah, let's see what I can do. Let me go to my audio settings and I will turn up my input volume. Okay, now that's up all the way. Does that work any better? Okay, great.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, perfect. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go, in terms of what the Off to Class account looks like. But Christine, go ahead and put the actual link in there, just so people don't have to get their phones out and snap a picture of the screen. Okay, perfect, great. And then I will leave the QR code in the top right as we continue. So I'm going to just kind of go over what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about the necessary skills to teach specifically foundational literacy, specifically to secondary English learners. And this is designed to be something of a crash course, even if you've never had explicit literacy training. And so I would love to just be as interactive as possible. So just in the chat, just type yes or no if you have had training in teaching foundational literacy, just because I want to see kind of where we are. Okay, yes, no, yes, yes, yes. Okay, no, yes, no, no, yes. Okay, so we've got a mix of yeses and nos here. And what we have really found with Off to Class is that there's a lot of the foundational literacy materials are directed toward younger learners, which often turns off the older learners. And it's often the teachers who work with those younger learners who get specific training in foundational literacy. So a lot of times you get teachers in secondary who are working with secondary students who are struggling with literacy. They may not even have L1 literacy, and they lack the tools themselves, and they lack the tools to give to their students who don't want to see the dancing puppy introducing the letters of the alphabet on the screen, which turns them off right away. So that's fine. So that's what we're going to go over today. We'll talk about key concepts and strategies for working with all low proficiency students. And we'll talk about resources to work with newcomers at all proficiency levels, starting with brand new arrivals. So usually it's a pretty safe assumption when I say, do you work with newcomers? I'm not even going to bother, because if I say yes or no, if you work with newcomers, there might be one or two no's, but the rest of you are going to be yeses, just in our experience with K-12 teachers. That's what we're going to go over today. And I'm going to go, it's 7:10 right now. I'm going to go for about 30 minutes. Okay, that's what we're going to cover in this, and I'm going to stick to that. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So I want to talk, just to introduce myself really quickly. My name is Chris Rush. I'm the head of teacher training at Off to Class. At Off to Class, we sell content and assessments for K-12 ESL. And I've been in this industry for a long time. I've been at Off to Class for a long time. I've worked both with K-12 students and with adults. So I want to start off just asking in the chat, can you just type in a success and a challenge that you have faced with newcomer students? I just kind of want to get a feel for what people's experience this year has been working with lower proficiency students. So feel free to just put in the chat a challenge that you faced and one success that you faced that you have had with your newcomers. And I can see the chat as I go, but as I ask questions and I want to participate, I'll read out the answers as they come in, but I will also continue to keep going. Okay, great. And then we've got some things coming in. Yeah, mixed classrooms, definitely always a challenge and not enough time, never is. Motivation is a challenge and a success. It's great when that could be a success. Resource challenge, great problem solving success. Yeah, okay. Accessible curriculum. Yeah, absolutely. Difficulty transferring language. They've explicitly learned to related tasks. Okay, hear that a lot. Material that's engaging at their instructional levels, but age appropriate. Yep, hear that all the time. Challenge, use of proper pronouns, success, willingness to try. Okay, great. Making them feel welcomed, credits for graduation. Yep, translation being incorrect. Okay, this is really good. Challenge working refugee students who are not literate home language, right? Students who lack L1 for sure. Students don't try to speak, but they're making progress. Difficult implementing and spending enough time. Yep, okay. Okay, perfect. This is great. Yeah, immature behavior, understood. Yeah, okay. Okay, that's fantastic. So I'm going to talk about what we're going to go over like in the context of Off to Class. Off to Class, you can get the free account with the QR code here, and I'll go into a little more detail about that later. But up at the top of the lesson library at Off to Class, that's where you're going to find things for newcomers. And this is the order in which we're going to talk about things today. So the first thing we're going to talk about is how to work with foundational literacy. And so some strategies and techniques for working with foundational literacy. So we're going to talk about that first. And before we get into specifics of foundational literacy, just want to briefly talk about why it's important, especially for secondary English learners. So research shows that literacy gaps exist across various groups of secondary ELs. Some students have had limited or interrupted education. Others have learned to read and write in a different language. But regardless of their background, the gaps can have a significant impact on students' ability to access grade level content and make progress in their overall English proficiency. That's why addressing literacy gaps is so important if we want to see students make real gains in their English skills. By targeting foundational literacy, we are not just teaching them how to decode words, we're also giving them the tools they need to engage with complex texts, express their ideas in writing, and fully participate in their mainstream classes. However, we cannot just use the same literacy interventions that we use with younger learners. Secondary ELs need age-appropriate materials and strategies that recognize their needs and their experiences. They might feel self-conscious about their reading abilities or resistant to instruction that feels babyish. That's why it's important to find resources and approaches that are specifically designed for older learners. And when we do this work to close literacy gaps, the benefits go beyond reading and writing. By improving foundational literacy, we can help students access content in their other classes. They are better equipped to read and understand their textbooks, participate in discussions, demonstrate their knowledge in written assignments, and by investing in literacy, we're investing in their overall academic success. So as we continue to go through the presentation, this frames the importance of the work that we're doing by addressing foundational literacy. By going into these gaps and giving age-appropriate instruction, you're not just teaching skills, you're opening doors across the spectrum for all of these students. And so I would love to ask, so how comfortable are you with foundational literacy skills? So just put a number in the chat, rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 is like, I know little to nothing about teaching foundational literacy, and this is an area that is a big need for me. 10 is like I could teach everybody here how to teach foundational literacy. So that way, okay, cool, cool. 7, 4, 7, 5, 6, 5, 6, 7. Okay, great. Okay, yeah, Jean has a master's in reading. I should hand the mic to you. 5, 7, 4, 5, 8. Never been specifically trained, but you've taught it for 20 years. Right. Okay, great. 3. Okay, perfect. So we've got a nice range. So when it comes to key terms, and this is the thing about foundational literacy, is that it requires vocabulary and skills that unless you have been explicitly taught, that you won't know. And this is especially true when it comes into explicit phonics, which we're going to talk about. So let's talk about some terms: phonemic awareness, phoneme, grapheme, sound out words, sight words, voiced and unvoiced sounds. Okay, anyone who knows one of these, put a definition in the chat if you know what one of these words means, because I don't want to bore you if this is stuff that we already know. Phonemic awareness, sounds and symbols. Okay, good. Graphemes, letters. Good. Phonemes, sounds. Yeah. Phonemic awareness, sounds, symbols, phonics, letters. Okay, great. Someone do sound out or sight words. Sight words, high frequency words. Close. Yes, they are high frequency words, voice and voiceless. Where are my praxis prep cohort folks? That's Kelly. Okay, sight words, high frequency, not easily decodable. Yep, there we go. Don't follow phonics rules. There it is, Mary. Okay, good. So I'm going to have a couple of resources, and this is going to be more useful for those who have less experience with teaching explicit phonics. So there's a term, we have a downloadable sheet with key terms. I'm just going to put the link right there. There's a QR code as well. And this is being recorded. And so we'll also include these links in the follow-up, but I did just put the link in the chat. So we have a link of a key term sheet for teaching literacy, of some of these terms. So I'll go through these pretty quickly. Yeah, phonemic awareness, the ability to hear, identify, manipulate individual sounds in words. So it's skills like rhyming, syllables. Phonemic awareness deals specifically with the smallest units of sound, which are phonemes. So for example, knowing that the word cat is made up of 3 distinct sounds, cat. Phonemic awareness is the foundation of learning to read and write, and we'll talk a little bit more how to develop that. So this is a foundational skill. Research has consistently shown that children who have strong phonemic awareness are more likely to become strong readers, because when students understand that words are made up of individual sounds, they're on their way to cracking the code of written language. So what does phonemic awareness look like in practice? So key skills are like segmenting words into individual phonemes. So taking the word cat and breaking it into cat. Blending phonemes into words. So taking the sounds d, g, and then putting them together to say dog. Identifying initial, medial, and final sounds in words. Yes, the link to the key terms is right, Yolanda, right above that link in the chat is the link. Or also adding, deleting, or substituting phonemes to create new words. So going from cat to bat, and so doing minimal pairs. These skills are usually taught through oral language activities like games, songs, and rhymes. The focus is on manipulating the sounds in words without necessarily connecting them to written letters. So for our strategies and how to do this, if you teach secondary students, I've had teachers say that they feel like their students are too old for this. And while it is true that most students develop phonemic awareness in the early grades, many of our secondary ELs have not had that opportunity, and they still need explicit instruction and dedicated practice, just like the younger learners do. The key is using age-appropriate activities and using the non-babyish material. So instead of nursery rhymes, maybe you use poetry or tongue twisters, or other content-related texts to practice phonemic awareness skills. You can also incorporate movement, art, technology to keep things fresh and relevant. Bottom line being that phonemic awareness is the necessary foundation for literacy development, no matter how old a student is. And by explicitly teaching and practicing these skills with secondary ELs, you can set them up for future success. So it sounds like most people knew phonemes and graphemes. So phoneme is the smallest unit of sound that distinguishes words. So they're not the same as letters. So like a single phoneme can be represented by multiple letters, like sh or g, like hi. And a single letter can represent multiple phonemes, like the A that's in cat versus make. And of course, this is what makes English so challenging, because these relationships are not always straightforward. The grapheme is the written representation of the phoneme. So they are the letters or letter combinations that we use to spell words. So for example, the word shell has three phonemes, sh, l, but it's got four graphemes, s, h, e, double l. And when we're reading and spelling, we are teaching students how to map phonemes onto graphemes and vice versa. And this is what phonics instruction is all about, helping students understand the relationships between the sounds in the words and the letters that represent those sounds. And so English has 44 phonemes in most American varieties. It depends on where you're from, right? Sometimes pan and pan, right, have the same one, even though they're different graphemes. But while we generally are working with 44, dialects and accents have different phoneme inventories. So as teachers, it's obviously something that we want to be aware of in the classroom and help students understand the typical phoneme grapheme correspondences that they are going to encounter in written English. And I see Laura says, I thought about oral language development this year. I was thinking of games that require conversation, like Guess Who. That's a good one. Guess Who is that game where like you got to be like, is the person wearing a mustache? And then they got to like knock down the ones that have the mustache, right? Is that Guess Who? That's a good one. Yeah, that's a great, because they've got to like explain and articulate and describe. That's a great idea. Grapheme good for adjectives. Yeah. Grapheme phoneme correspondences can be complex. So this is one of the challenges of teaching phonics, is that these relationships aren't straightforward. So the like one phoneme can be represented by C or K or CK, and some graphemes can be represented by multiple phonemes. So OW as in snow, OU as in plow. So there's a lot of irregular words in English that don't follow typical patterns at all. We're going to be very familiar with this as teachers. And as a result, phonics instruction should be systematic, explicit, with opportunities to practice and review. Students are going to need to learn the most common phoneme grapheme correspondences, as well as strategies for decoding unfamiliar words and recognizing irregular words by sight. Okay, I'm going to move on. We're going to keep going. So voice versus unvoiced. This is something that people also seemed to be familiar with. So unvoiced sounds produced without vocal cord vibration. So now this is a great example of that's a definition, right? But that's not what brings it to life with students. So this is where I would just love, like, do you have a way that you teach this, right? Like some teachers will say things like, put your hand on your throat, right? And do you feel the vibration? We've got these images, right? So the images that I've got with the Z, where you can see the voice coming out and the sound lines. Bring in a musical instrument, guitar. Okay, I would love to hear more about that, because that sounds super interesting. Because this is where something dry that doesn't make sense maybe on its face if you just stick with the text. You can do a lot to help students bring this to life. So unvoiced, no vocal cord vibration, voiced with vocal cord vibration. Of course, the key here, like between S and Z, is that your articulators, your mouth, your lips, your teeth, and your tongue, they're in the same exact position. The only difference between these two phonemes is your vocal cords are vibrating. So it's like, do you feel the air? And yes, it is, Yolanda's asked, it is necessary to teach this to the students. And that's part of the challenge of foundational literacy is that you kind of have to get into some of this stuff in a way that is age appropriate because they are going to have to know this in order to be able to make the proper sound when they see an S on the page versus a Z. So we do have to get into this. And that's why it's like it helps to do really exaggerated things. Put your hands on your throat. Do you feel the air coming through? That kind of thing. And then, using icons and helping students distinguish between voice and unvoiced. So sound out words and sight words. So sound out words or decodable words. So these are the ones that are decodable using grapheme phoneme correspondences or phonetically regular words. So this is this is when I was a kid, right? Sound it out. You sound out each grapheme, blend the sounds together. They are the words that follow the phonics patterns and the rules that students have learned. So for example, once students know the most common sounds for the graphemes S, T, O, and P, then they can decode words like stop, post, and tops. So those sound out words are the foundation because they allow students to apply these specific patterns to grapheme phoneme correspondences of unfamiliar words. But sight words or heart words or non-decodable words just have to be memorized as whole units. My students have enjoyed the Marva Collins chants from her wall cards. I don't know about those, but chants are great things to do as practice for these things also. So with sight words, they don't follow the typical phonics patterns. They have to be recognized by sight, and they're often high frequency. So somebody mentioned that earlier, and they they occur often in texts, but they are difficult to sound out using the regular grapheme phoneme correspondences. So those are ones that students just have to see and commit to memory. They have to be explicitly taught. They have to be practiced until students recognize them automatically because they don't follow the typical rules. And here, this is an example of what we do in off to class to identify the types. So just like we talked about using icons or symbols to indicate voiced and unvoiced sounds, it can be helpful to use icons to identify sound out words and sight words in instructional materials as a visual cue for students as they're learning to differentiate between the types of words. So as an example, here we have sound out words indicated by the icon of the person's silhouette and the sound coming out. So that's sounding it out. Whereas sight words have that X over that and it's got the I instead. And then when students are having to see words and then they're going to have to determine which words in a set are sound out and sight, then we've got both icons together. So those are really good scaffolds to help students start to be able to distinguish between those two words until they're able to commit them to memory. So because these have to be memorized, that means they have to be practiced, and that means just a lot of techniques can be important. So flashcards, games, like Bingo Go Fish, the one someone said already that I already had forgotten. What was it? Guess who? That's it. So encouraging students to use these words in their own writing, in their own language, teaching sight words in the context of meaningful phrases or sentences rather than just in isolation. The key is to give multiple opportunities for students to see, hear, use the words in different contexts until they become automatic and effortless to recognize and to read. Oh, and Zingo has a good one for sight words too. Okay, awesome. Now, these terms that I've gone over are like the crash course basics of terms to know to teach foundational literacy. Of course, there are many others that I am, because I want to stick to time, I'm not going to get into these. And I would say it can be overwhelming, right? Especially if you're new to teaching foundational literacy, but don't feel like you have to master every term before you start working with students. Start with the concepts that we've talked about so far: phonemic awareness, phonemes, graphemes, sound out words, and sight words. And as you get more experience and you get confidence, you can gradually add more terms as you learn more. So don't be overwhelmed. Focus on the important things. Build your knowledge over time. The more you learn, the more you apply, the better equipped you'll be to support your secondary ELs. Okay, and then when it comes to teaching phonemic awareness, it's not enough to just know the sounds. We have to be able to explain how the sounds are made. And this is the tricky part as teachers. So we have to help our students produce the sounds accurately, and we have to give them feedback. So this is super important for secondary ELs who might be learning to produce sounds that don't exist in their native language. So we have to understand articulation, how sounds are produced through the mouth. When we know how sounds are made, we can give better instruction and better feedback. And this is one of the most challenging things for teachers who are teaching literacy for the first time, is that we have never thought as adults about how we're using our lips, our mouth, our teeth, our tongue. And so we got to think, what am I doing in my mouth to do this? And then how do I explain that? Because that's how you're going to fix errors. So if a student is having trouble with the TH sound, it will really help to know that it is a dental fricative, which means the tongue needs to be placed between the teeth and the air needs to flow continuously. And if you can break it down in that way, you can help the student make the right adjustments to produce the sound correctly. So when we're explaining how sounds are made, it's important to use correct and precise terminology. So when we're talking about our lips, our tongue, our teeth, our vocal cords, our alveolar ridge behind your upper teeth, the hard palate, which is the roof of the mouth, and the soft palate, which is at the back of the mouth, where sounds like where k and g are made. So by using terms consistently and accurately, we can help students model and give the right feedback to help them refine their pronunciation. So this modeling is super important. When you're modeling, this is again where exaggeration comes into play. You need students to see how you're using your mouth. You might need to use a mirror so the students can see their own mouths and they can compare them. And as students practice, we need to be able to give feedback. So if a student is having trouble, try to identify the issue and offer a targeted suggestion. So this is where we need to be really demonstrative in how we're showing them how to do this. So remember, put your tongue between your teeth for the sound, or make sure your voice is turned on for zzz, and feel your throat to know that your voice is turned on zzz. And you've got to give lots of opportunities for practice and repetition, because the more students hear and produce, the more automatic and accurate they will become. So ultimately, the goal is to help students develop strong awareness of the physical aspects of sounds. We want them to be able to hear what is happening in their mouths when they make different sounds, to be able to make adjustments based on that feedback. And then Laura says, it sounds like we need training from a speech teacher. Well, look, that would be ideal, right? But I think what I'm trying to communicate is that even though some teachers may never have thought about this before, just a little bit of thinking about it, a little bit of reading about it, and a little bit of practice will go a long way. There's a tremendous difference in a teacher who has never heard of any of this to then attempt to coach students who are having difficulty making the sounds of English, and a teacher who's even had just a taste of this, who understands what phonemic awareness is, what the names are of the different parts of the mouth, and has a little bit of practice in giving the feedback. It's just one of those things where like a tiny little bit of training can go a long way. And that's part of like what this is, right? Think of this as like a crash course. That's my goal. My goal is that somebody who has never had explicit training in literacy can come to this and then not feel, if they were in a situation where they were with students who needed this kind of feedback, that they were just completely overwhelmed and out of their depth, that they had at least the most rudimentary basics to be able to help those students. Okay, great. So I'm going to skip talking about the role of the teacher just because I want to make sure we're on time. We all know how important teachers are. So providing models, demonstration, tailored instruction, adapting lessons, creative and supporting learning environment, and offering feedback and encouragement, all super, super important. So in Off to Class, in the free account that we're offering, we do have foundational literacy lessons. And in foundational literacy lessons, we have explicit phonics. So there's pictures here of what are on the slides. So when we teach a sound is always going to be connected to its anchor word. So here, the sound we're learning is E, and the anchor word is eagle. And we can see there's not a lot of text on this slide. If we're dealing with pre-literate students, we're doing listen and repeat, and we're just going to do E and eagle. And then we're going to hear words that use E, bee, tree, eat. And then we're going to hear examples of where E is at the beginning or the middle or the end of a word, for example. And then we have ta, right? So then it says which words start with ta. So then we have tree and tomato and tiger and table, but not chair, and not dog. Can we print? No, but you don't need to print. If you use the link, if the QR code that's at the top of the slide, or the link to the free Off to Class account, you can get right into those lessons and use them with your students right away. So that's not a printable, but you can get that in an Off to Class account. Okay, key takeaways before we switch over to newcomers for a few minutes. We've talked about how essential foundational literacy is. We've talked about the key concepts, how phonemic awareness is the most important thing for reading and spelling development, the important role that teachers play, and how effective instruction involves adapting to student needs and creating a supporting environment. So I do have paper handouts here. So I'm gonna go ahead and drop the links to these. So these are handouts that are just going to kind of include many of the things that I've said here so far. And then I just want to make sure that those come as separate links. I think I hope that didn't just be all just one link. Let me just make sure. Yeah, okay, great. So that's a big block of link text, but those are 4 documents that are there. And again, that'll be in the follow-up email. So that's going to be like a little more of a printable text-based walkthrough of what I just said. And so then an important question to ask is where does literacy fit for you? So literacy is a top priority for a lot of districts, featured prominently in strategic plans. The heightened focus on literacy is driven by recognizing the role that literacy plays in academic success, awareness of persistent literacy gaps among a lot of student populations, not just newcomers and not just ELs. And there are state and federal mandates that emphasize the importance of literacy instruction and set specific targets. So teachers and also district leadership are often under pressure to find effective solutions that align with their literacy goals and that meet the needs of unique student populations. The Off to Class foundational literacy lessons are aligned with the science of reading and include all 5 essential components of phonological awareness, phonics, word recognition, fluency, and comprehension. The lessons in Off to Class provide systematic and explicit instruction in these key areas following a structured scope and sequence that includes phonemes and graphemes in a logical progression, allowing students to build their skills incrementally. So I would encourage you to check out Off to Class. Now, when your students are a little bit past needing foundational literacy, like what can you do next? Like what about students who don't need explicit phonics? What about students who do have the very basics of reading but may still be newcomers? So I just kind of want to go to the next phase of what is available in Off to Class. There are other newcomer lessons. You will see these lessons in the library. There is newcomer lessons, and then there are beginner or entering for those of you in Weed Estates. The difference between what Off to Class designates as newcomer versus beginner is represented in this one sentence in this slide. Hi, my name is Maria. I'm from Spain. I'm 18 years old. That's where beginner starts. If that's level appropriate, then you use a beginner lesson. If that's too much English, then you go to a newcomer lesson. The newcomer lessons are a lot of listen and repeat, a lot of vocabulary building. So we can see alphabet, numbers, in-class vocabulary, color, shape, and form, people, verbs, food, money, at home, clothing, time, dates, and weather and technology. So these lessons are designed to be sequential in nature so that if once your student completes the foundational literacy lessons, they're ready to do these step-by-step lessons. Then they will be ready to proceed to speaking and reading lessons, also dedicated for newcomers. So speaking and reading for newcomers address the same topic. So reading about families and speaking about families, same themes, just different language domains. And there is homework on these lessons that has a speaking recorder and writing practice. This is great for test prep because it gets students used to speaking into a microphone, which they can do on their own. So here we see examples like a student can write, what time do you go to bed in the daily routine lesson? And there's also a place to answer that orally. What time do you go to bed? The student presses the record button, and then the browser will turn on the microphone. The student can speak, and you will be able to listen to that student's answer and give them feedback if you would like later. And to that end, we also have a couple of newcomers handouts. So I'm just going to put a couple of links to the newcomers handouts here. So we have a checklist for a newcomer-friendly classroom, and I also have a sheet of newcomer vocabulary that is divided by part of speech. So I'm going to put those two links in there, and again, those things will be available. So the final thing that I want to talk about, and at this point, if you have questions, please put your question in the chat. And I see, okay, Krista says this appears more like English as a foreign language rather than students who need to grapple with grade level content in high school. Yes, it is primarily English as a foreign language. Now, the foundational literacy can be for beyond ELs, but off to class primarily addresses ELs. There are core content lessons, but the core content lessons are going to be framed in a way that's a perspective for English learners. Like we're making sure that you have the vocabulary of mathematics and you know how to read numbers so that you're not going to fall further behind in your math class. So it's not explicitly for grade level content. It's explicitly for ELs, even though it can be applied beyond. So let me pull, where's my presentation? Here it is. Okay. So if you use the link and you sign up to your off the class account, this is what you're going to see. You can just think of it as a giant lesson library. So all of these colored boxes. Oh, are we still? We're not still sharing that anymore. No, I need to. Do you see? I don't think we do. Oh no, we see it. You can still see it. Great.
Good to go.
So these boxes are all contain the lessons. So for example, the foundational literacy lessons, which are right here at the top left. This is a drop down that has lessons in it. So I'm just going to press the play button to launch a lesson. I'm just going to press I'm just browsing so I can see what a lesson looks like. And then I'm going to be taken into a lesson that I can use live with my students. So I've got teacher notes here on the left. I've got slide content here on the right. My students can have accounts on Off to Class, and if they are on their own devices, they don't see the teacher notes. They only see the lesson slides. And as I move through the slides, the students move with me. If I am projecting my screen on a smartboard or any other way, I can hide the teacher notes by moving them out into a different window. So if I'm projecting this now, I can still see the teacher notes, but my students can't. I can also access the teacher notes on my phone. So this is how it goes. You're just gonna go slide by slide through, and this is what we talked about. Here is where we're gonna hear E, and we've got a play button at the top where I've got an audio, and I can see what the transcript is, and the transcript is just eagle. So we're gonna do E for eagle. We're gonna see B, tree, T, and eat, and then we're gonna do another sound. And we're limiting the scope of our activities here so that we're not explaining to pre-literate students how to do 24 activities. We're just going to do the same thing over and over again. Sit, lips, grin, skip, men, pen, bed, web. So we're going to do the sounds of English, And then as soon as we're finished doing the sounds of English, then we're going to start putting them together and we're going to start reading simple words. So if I just go 2 or 3 lessons in the future, I can see here, now we're going to learn s, a, and t. And we're just going to kind of do a very similar type of thing. We're going to say, oh, we use s at the beginning and at the end. So now we're going to listen. Is it at the beginning or the end? Sun at the beginning, bus at the end. And then we can see other letters that applies to. So which word has an S? Sip or zip? So we're doing some minimal pairs. And so we're going to do the same thing with these sounds. And then by the time we get to the end, we're reading. So we have a little text that says sat, and we're learning to blend sat and at. So these are the first 2 words that a student is going to read. All of these lessons have practice that students can do on their own. I've got context clues, so I can click a word and I can hear the audio. I can Google Translate. I can image search. I can do a dictionary. And Vita asks, where does writing come into play? Very important question. So writing, in terms of not very much at this level, other than like we're teaching them to make the sounds. But certainly writing comes into play as soon as we get into higher levels. So even at the reading and the speaking, I'm going to just pop into show you what a homework assignment looks like. So this is a homework assignment and students are writing immediately. So I'm going to look at this and we're going to say, okay, Joy is the mother of Tara and Peter. So students are going to start with very simple gap fills like this. And then by the time they get to the next page, they're writing sentences. So they're going to write sentences about the families that they see, and then they're going to record answers. And then on the last page, they're going to have a longer form. So this is my family. Everyone is different. My father's 45. He works at the bank. He plays basketball. This is my mother. She likes to sing, dance, and art. So you're going to write about your family using this example. So the student would be able to press record, and they would say, my name is, my mother, my sister, my brother, etc. And then you will be able to listen to this later. So this is what the homework looks like. And the homework is where the writing comes into play. And so there's all levels. This very top row is the newcomers. But as we go down, we can see we've got all the way up to upper intermediate and advanced. So this is great for LTELs, for students who aren't testing out. We've got more advanced speaking activities for them to help them get the most of it too. Are these printable if students don't have computers? The homework is printable. The lesson slides are not. So if I open, for example, an upper intermediate lesson, I can see that we're going to do more complex stuff. So we're reviewing tenses, and then students are going to talk about people who inspire them. So I can see here, we're going to learn about Florence Nightingale, and we're reading more complex text about Florence Nightingale. So here I've got a longer form text, and I've got some vocabulary that's bolded, and I've got some gap fills here. So she was, so we can type, and your students can type. She showed an interest in here. I can draw on the slide, so I can make marks and things on it, and I can remove those things. And again, I can use these context tools by right-clicking in here audio and do Google Translate for different languages and things like that. So the easiest way to think of Off to Class is a lesson library that you can use on a variety of topics so that you will always have something that is relevant and level appropriate for your students, something that is engaging. We have speaking activities, listening activities. For those of you who are in WIDA states, we have access test prep materials. I know this is the time of year for that. So we've got that has just been released. We've got more that's coming out this week. And so Yolanda, the way you would print the homework, you would just, way you would print anything, Control P. You just Control P and print it out that way. And Alan, how many languages is to translate? It's Google Translate. It's Google Translate. So any language, so as far as the translate feature, any language that Google Translate has, it'll translate. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the number is, but I think it's a very high number. So Is the speaking available? Yes, the speaking is available. So all you have to do is open a speaking lesson here. This is for newcomers.
The Wida
Um,
speaking, I mean, the Wida speaking, is that
oh
available?
yeah, it's going to be available, I think, Friday. These are being released right now. This is what the content team is working on imminently.
Oh,
So
perfect.
listening and reading came out yesterday. Speaking and writing are coming out, I believe, this week. The promise is by the end of the month. That's what the publishing team has promised. They said, I think Friday, but guaranteed by the end of the month. Um, so yes, and you can, there's all kinds of things. I'm not going to go into what you can do in off to class, but you can create accounts for your students where you give your students usernames and passwords. You can create up to 50 students. You can group them into classes, and then by clicking on the classes, you can use data to see how your students are progressing. There's homework, there's progress tests, far more than could be covered. But with this coupon, this will allow you to use off to class completely for free for the next 4 months for up to 50 students. Normally, a free account is very limited. You only get to use 20 students, and the lessons you have access to are very low. But this code that we're using with Kelly in this webinar is giving you an all access account for 4 months for 50 students. So I would just say, give it a shot, go for it. And once you sign up for off to class, I'll start communicating with you and giving you resources. We have a help center. I have open office hours where I sit in a meeting room for 90 minutes twice a week, and I just wait for teachers to show up. And so then I can say, tell me about your students, and I'll help you get the most out of off to class. So if you are not 100% tech savvy, if you are like, I don't know, there's a mix of colored boxes here, I don't exactly know how I would use this with my students, come to office hours. I will explain it to you step by step, and I'll give you personalized attention. So yes, it is good timing for test prep. That's why these lessons are just coming out right now. And even if for those of you who are not in WIA states, this is still excellent prep for all state assessments. The standard may not be exactly the same, but they're all going to be based on the same principles. So they're going to be very good for no matter whether you are in Arizona, California, New York, a state that uses their own standard, or if you're in an ELPA 21, if you're in Texas, doesn't matter. These are going to be useful for you and your students. So yeah, use the link, sign up for a free off to class account, and then you're going to start getting emails from me. And if you reply, we will help you, and I'll get you into office hours where I can sit in a one-on-one with you and answer any questions you have. Okay, yes, you're welcome. If you're going to plan to go through HQIM process for any states with Literacy Acts, not yet. We just have done our first literacy lessons, so we're still collecting feedback before we think about how we're going to expand further. But good question. And you do get real people when you ask questions. Yes. Tomorrow morning from 9:30 to 11 Eastern, I'm going to be in office hours. And in fact, so let me just give you the office hours link. If you want to come tomorrow morning and ask me more about off to class, that link will show the schedule, the time, and the link. And I will be there from 9:30 to 11 a.m. EST. If you come, I will be waiting, and you can ask me anything you want about off to class in your new account. Or you can ask me, how would I use this? And I'll just say, tell me about your students and tell me how you teach, or you push in or you pull out, you mix levels, and we'll go from there, and I'll help you make the most of it. So that is everything that I wanted to share. You're very welcome. Thank you for asking questions. And at this point, I'll turn it back over to Kelly.
All right. Thank you. I'm just amazed. I think it's been a couple years since we worked together. And so seeing the growth and how much more is here, and all the feedback that we talked about a few years ago is now right there. So impressive work to the off to class team. Lots of
Thank
growth
you.
happening.
Thank you. I didn't even think about that, Kelly. Yeah, since it's been a couple of years, there's a lot more than there was the last time.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
the link to office hours, there you go. That's the page. And I think Kelly, can we put that in like the follow-up email just so that if people want to have that?
Yes, I've been keeping track of the links you posted. So when we, by tomorrow noonish, should be before noon, you will get an email with directions of how to find the replay. If you missed a spot or if you want to share this with someone who couldn't be here tonight. And then also with the links to the different handouts that were there. And if you think of something else, just let me know. If you have another question, feel free to let us know and we can include that as well. Laura, you may share with anyone you'd like to share with. This is
Yes.
out
Yes, feel
there.
free to share that link. Share the link for the free account. Please feel free to share it with any teachers that you know. Absolutely.
Right. Same as any of our webinars, we will find a spot on the website where we'll keep the replay. And as you come across people who ask questions, especially when it comes to early literacy and older students, that's a tough topic that people are often asking about. Just know that will be a permanent spot on the website for you to come back to. And when Off Class has even more updates, we'll update the video. No pressure for you guys.
They are making more lessons all the time. So
I'm sure. I'm sure. All right. Well, we're going to say thank you. Thank you for spending your afternoon, evening hour with us. I know, especially as we're rolling into December, that there's so much going on in the evenings that we really appreciate your dedication and the time you spend learning things for your students. And again, look for that email. Should be to you by noon. If you don't see it, check your spam because that's always something we deal with. If you still don't see it, email me at info@englishlearnerportal.com and we'll see if we can find our way around those spam filters. All right. Any last words from Off to Class?
no, thank you so much for having me, Kelly. It's been a pleasure as always.
All right. Thanks. Great to see you all again. And we'll be in touch with everybody tomorrow.
All right, sounds great. Thanks so much.